Picture this: you've spent 15 years building a $25 million empire alongside your father, working 18-hour days, negotiating million-dollar contracts, and solving problems that would break most people. Then he dies and leaves everything to your sister, who thinks a hard hat is a fashion accessory. But here's the thing about fathers and secrets: sometimes they save the best surprise for last. I'm Emma Rodriguez, and this is the story of how I went from invisible daughter to CEO overnight, thanks to a secret document that changed everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The leather chair in Mr. Henderson's office feels like it's swallowing me whole. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, Phoenix stretches endlessly under the brutal July sun, heat waves rising from asphalt like ghosts. Inside this mahogany-paneled sanctuary of old money and older secrets, the air conditioning hums so quietly you can hear your own heartbeat. Mine sounds like a drum solo. My father's lawyer shuffles through documents with the reverence of a priest, handling sacred texts. Robert Rodriguez built Rodriguez Construction and Development from absolutely nothing, started with a pickup truck, a tool belt, and dreams bigger than the Arizona sky. 30 years later, RCD owns half the commercial developments in Greater Phoenix and employs over 200 people. The company logo, those bold red letters spelling out our family name, marks construction sites from Scottsdale to Tempe like flags planted by conquering armies. I've been part of this empire since I was 12 years old, tagging along to job sites on Saturdays, learning to read blueprints before I could properly read novels. While other kids spent summers at camps or pools, I spent mine understanding load-bearing walls and foundation requirements. Dad would boost me up onto his shoulders so I could see over concrete forms, pointing out how buildings came together piece by piece, dream by dream. The conference room fills slowly with the people who share my DNA but increasingly feel like strangers. Mom enters first, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour, wearing a black dress that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent. Patricia Rodriguez has always looked like money, the kind of effortless elegance that comes from never having worried about bills or budgets. She settles into her chair with the grace of someone accustomed to being served rather than serving. Victoria glides in next, and heads turn automatically. They always do. My older sister possesses that rare combination of natural beauty and cultivated sophistication that makes rooms go quiet when she enters. Her auburn hair cascades in perfect waves over shoulders that have never carried anything heavier than designer handbags. She studied art history at Princeton, spent 2 years in Florence, finding herself among Renaissance masterpieces, and now curates exhibitions for wealthy collectors who treat culture like another luxury acquisition. Michael slouches through the door last, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. My younger brother has perfected the art of existing without contributing. At 28, he's still exploring his options, while living in the guest house behind Mom's mansion. He nods at everyone with the detached politeness of someone attending a distant relative's funeral rather than his own father's will reading. I watch them settle into their seats, these people who share my last name and absolutely nothing else. We look like a family in photographs, the same dark eyes, the same stubborn Rodriguez chin, the same olive complexion that speaks to our Mexican grandmother's legacy. But photographs lie. They capture surfaces, not souls. Mr. Henderson clears his throat, a sound that seems to echo off the wood-paneled walls. He's been Dad's attorney for over 20 years, shepherding our family through business acquisitions, property purchases, and now this final legal ceremony. His wire-rimmed glasses catch the morning light as he opens the thick folder containing my father's final wishes. We are gathered here today for the reading of Robert Rodriguez's last will and testament, executed on March 15th of this year. March 15th. I remember that day perfectly because I spent it at the Mesa Community Center project, dealing with a crisis that threatened to derail our biggest municipal contract. Dad was supposed to be there, but he called that morning saying he had important business to handle. I assumed he meant another client meeting, another deal to negotiate. I never imagined he was writing my future in legal language. The lawyer's voice takes on that formal cadence that makes even simple words sound profound. Robert Rodriguez, being of sound mind and body, hereby distributes his earthly possessions as follows. My stomach clenches. This is it. The moment that will determine whether 15 years of 60-hour weeks, missed birthdays, and sacrificed relationships will finally be recognized. I've earned this inheritance through every calloused hand, every project completed ahead of schedule, every crisis solved while others slept. I've earned it through loving this business as much as Dad did, understanding that RCD isn't just a company, it's a legacy, a testament to what immigrants' children can build in America. To my beloved wife Patricia, I leave our family home and all personal property contained therein, along with a trust fund ensuring her comfort for the remainder of her life. Mom nods, unsurprised. They discussed these arrangements years ago. To my son Michael, I leave the vacation properties in Sedona and Lake Tahoe, along with an investment portfolio valued at approximately $2 million. Michael straightened slightly, looking pleasantly surprised. $2 million for someone who's never earned $2,000 through his own efforts. To my daughter Emma, I leave my personal tools, my collection of construction and architecture books, and my gratitude for her years of dedication to Rodriguez Construction and Development. My heart stops. Tools and books. 15 years reduced to tools and books. Mr. Henderson continues without pause, without acknowledging the way the air has suddenly left my lungs. To my beloved daughter Victoria Rodriguez, I leave the entirety of Rodriguez Construction and Development, including all assets, contracts, intellectual property, and business relationships, believing she possesses the vision and leadership necessary to carry our family legacy into the future. The words hit like physical blows. Victoria gasps, her hand flying to her throat in a gesture of delicate surprise. Mom claps softly, her eyes shining with pride and vindication. Michael actually smiles for the first time since entering the room. And me? I sit frozen, watching my life's work transfer to someone who couldn't identify a Phillips head screwdriver in a police lineup. Victoria accepts the hugs and congratulations with gracious humility, as if she's been preparing for this responsibility her entire life instead of spending it in art galleries and wine tastings. She talks about fresh perspectives and bringing the company into the 21st century while I try to remember how to breathe. Mom reaches across the table to squeeze my hand, her touch warm but somehow patronizing. Emma, sweetie, you'll be Victoria's operations manager, of course. Daddy always said you were wonderful with the technical details. Technical details. 15 years of building client relationships, negotiating contracts, managing 100-person crews, solving engineering challenges that would stump MIT graduates, all of it reduced to technical details. Victoria nods enthusiastically, treating this arrangement like a generous gift she's bestowing upon me. Emma, I'm going to need you so much. You know the business better than anyone. We'll be such a good team. A team where she makes decisions about things she doesn't understand while I implement them without recognition or authority. The lawyer continues reading through smaller bequests, charitable donations, gifts to longtime employees, specific pieces of art or jewelry distributed among relatives. But I stop listening. My mind keeps cycling through the same impossible reality. Dad gave away my life's work to someone who's never earned it. I think about yesterday morning, when I arrived at the Scottsdale Resort project at 5:30 a.m. to coordinate the concrete pour. Victoria was probably still sleeping off whatever charity gala she'd attended the night before. I think about last month, when I spent 4 days straight negotiating with the City Planning Commission to save the downtown renovation project. Victoria was in Santa Fe, attending some art dealer's wedding. I think about every weekend I've spent reviewing contracts instead of having a social life, every vacation I've postponed because projects needed my attention, every relationship that withered because I chose RCD over romance. I think about the calluses on my hands from climbing scaffolding and the permanent squint lines around my eyes from reading blueprints in harsh construction lighting. All of it meaningless. All of it invisible to the man who raised me to believe that hard work and competence mattered more than anything else. As the meeting winds down and people begin discussing lunch plans and celebration dinners, I excuse myself quietly. Nobody protests or asks where I'm going. Why would they? The important business is finished, and I'm just the technical support now. I walk through downtown Phoenix in a daze, passing construction sites that bear our company's signs, buildings that exist because of projects I managed, developments that house families thanks to problems I solved. Each one feels like a piece of my identity being stripped away, claimed by someone who sees them as nothing more than assets on a balance sheet. The July heat hits like opening an oven door, but I barely notice. Inside, I'm colder than I've ever been. This morning I was Emma Rodriguez, heir apparent to a construction empire. This afternoon I'm Emma Rodriguez, operations manager reporting to someone who thinks load-bearing is what you do with heavy shopping bags. I reach my car and sit in the parking garage for 20 minutes, trying to process what just happened. My phone buzzes with a text from Victoria. Can you meet me at the office tomorrow at 8? I want to go over everything. So excited to work together. Excited. She's excited to inherit what I built while I'm excited to become her employee. I stare at that message until the words blur together, and for the first time since Dad's funeral. Last week, I let myself cry. Not the controlled, dignified tears of a grieving daughter, but the raw, ugly sobs of someone whose entire identity just crumbled in a mahogany-paneled room. Tomorrow I'll have to smile and pretend this makes sense. Tomorrow I'll have to train my replacement and act grateful for the opportunity. Tomorrow I'll have to watch Victoria sit in Dad's office, behind the desk where I've spent countless hours, planning our company's future. But tonight, I mourn the death of everything I thought I knew about my place in this family and this world. Tonight, I grieve the naive girl who believed that excellence and dedication would be enough. Tonight, I say goodbye to the Emma Rodriguez who thought her father saw her as more than just wonderful with the technical details. The celebration dinner takes place at Seasons 52, one of those upscale restaurants where the servers know which fork goes with which course and the wine list costs more than most people's car payments. Mom insisted on making reservations immediately after the will reading, declaring that Victoria's inheritance deserved proper recognition. The irony isn't lost on me that we're celebrating someone receiving something they never worked for at a restaurant I can barely afford on my salary. I arrived 20 minutes late, hoping to minimize the time I'll spend watching my family toast my professional funeral. The hostess leads me through the dimly lit dining room toward a corner table where familiar laughter echoes above the gentle clink of expensive glassware. As I approach, I see them arranged like a royal court celebrating the coronation of their new queen. Victoria sits at the head of the table, quite literally occupying the position Dad always claimed when we ate here for special occasions. She's changed from her conservative funeral attire into a flowing emerald dress that probably costs more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her auburn hair catches the candlelight as she gestures animatedly, describing her vision for Rodriguez. Construction and development to an audience that hangs on every word. Mom sits to Victoria's right, playing the role of Queen Mother with obvious relish. She's ordered champagne for the table, despite the fact that we're supposedly still in mourning. The bubbles catch the light in her glass as she raises it repeatedly to toast various aspects of Victoria's good fortune. Her eyes sparkle with the kind of pride I've only seen her display when Victoria accomplishes something, anything, no matter how small or unearned. Michael occupies the seat to Victoria's left, looking more animated than I've seen him in months. The prospect of having a sister as his boss apparently appeals to him more than the idea of reporting to me ever did. He's already discussing his plans to contribute more meaningfully to the family business, as if inheriting vacation properties and investment portfolios has suddenly inspired him to develop a work ethic. Even Uncle Carlos and Aunt Rosa are here, having driven down from Flagstaff to join the festivities. They're Dad's brother and sister-in-law, people who see our family maybe 3 times a year but who somehow felt compelled to witness Victoria's ascension to power. Uncle Carlos keeps patting Victoria's shoulder and calling her the new Heifa, while Aunt Rosa gushes about how proud Dad must be looking down from heaven. I slide into the only remaining chair, positioned at the foot of the table like some distant relative invited out of obligation rather than affection. The contrast in seating arrangements isn't subtle. Victoria holds court at one end while I occupy the spot typically reserved for children or unwelcome guests. Emma. Finally. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Victoria exclaims, her voice carrying across the restaurant with theatrical enthusiasm. We were just discussing the transition timeline. I think we should announce the ownership change to employees and clients next week. What do you think? The question feels like a trap. She's asking for my opinion while simultaneously making it clear that she's already decided. This is my first lesson in the new corporate hierarchy. I can provide input, but only after she's made up her mind. The Henderson project requires owner approval for the next phase of construction, I say carefully. We should probably brief you on the technical requirements before making any announcements. Mom waves her hand dismissively, the gesture causing her champagne to slosh dangerously close to the rim of her glass. Oh, Emma, always worrying about the details. Victoria doesn't need to understand every little technical thing. That's what project managers are for. Project managers. As if the person running a $25 million construction company shouldn't understand the fundamentals of construction. Uncle Carlos chuckles, the sound carrying a patronizing edge that makes my jaw clench. Robert always said Emma was his little engineer. Good thing Victoria has different strengths, eh? The business world needs vision, not just nuts and bolts. Little engineer. 15 years of experience reduced to a childhood nickname, as if my expertise is something cute rather than crucial. Victoria beams at the compliment, accepting praise for possessing vision, despite having never articulated a single strategic thought about RCD's future. I'm so grateful Emma will be there to handle all the technical aspects. I want to focus on growing our client base and expanding into new markets. New markets. She's been the official owner for approximately 6 hours and she's already planning expansion into areas she couldn't identify on a map. The server appears to take my order, but I've lost my appetite somewhere between little engineer and Victoria's grand plans for markets she's never researched. I request a salad and water, earning concerned looks from Mom about my stress eating habits. The irony that I'm actually stress not eating is apparently lost on her. As dinner progresses, the conversation revolves entirely around Victoria's inheritance and the family's excitement about her leadership. They discuss her fresh perspective and innovative thinking as if these qualities materialize automatically with ownership papers. Nobody mentions my contributions to the company's success. Nobody acknowledges the awkwardness of celebrating while the person who actually built what they're celebrating sits silently at the opposite end of the table. Michael raises his glass for what feels like the 10th toast of the evening. To Victoria. For bringing class and sophistication to the Rodriguez name. Class and sophistication. Because apparently 15 years of building the company's reputation through quality work and professional relationships didn't contribute to our family's standing in the business community. Victoria accepts each toast with gracious humility, as if she's reluctantly accepting a burden rather than celebrating an unearned windfall. She talks about honoring Dad's legacy and living up to his trust, while I sit there knowing she couldn't name 3 of our major clients without consulting company records. The conversation turns to Victoria's plans for renovating Dad's office. She wants to modernize the space and create a more welcoming environment for high-end clients. She's already contacted an interior designer friend from her gallery connections to discuss removing the industrial elements that made the office feel connected to our actual business. Emma, you'll help coordinate the renovation, won't you? Victoria asks, her tone making it clear this isn't really a question. I know you have such a good relationship with contractors. I have a good relationship with contractors because I've worked alongside them for 15 years, earning their respect through competence and reliability. Victoria wants to leverage that relationship to redecorate an office she's never earned the right to occupy. Mom claps her hands together with delight. Oh, this will be wonderful. Finally, an office that reflects the caliber of clients we serve. Robert's space was so practical. Practical. The word hangs in the air like an accusation. Dad's office was practical because it served a practical function. He met with construction foremen and city inspectors, not art dealers and society wives. But apparently practicality is something to be overcome rather than celebrated. As the evening wears on, I find myself studying these people who share my DNA but increasingly feel like aliens from another planet. They talk about the construction business like it's an abstract concept rather than a daily reality involving real projects, real deadlines, and real consequences for mistakes. They discuss expansion and growth without understanding the operational challenges that make such ambitions possible. Victoria mentions wanting to explore high-end residential projects that would enhance our reputation in wealthy Phoenix neighborhoods. She's apparently unaware that we already handle high-end residential work, or that I personally manage the relationships with architects and developers who specialize in luxury construction. In her mind, upgrading our client base requires nothing more than intention and good taste. Uncle Carlos suggests that Victoria should join various country clubs and professional organizations to network with potential clients. The idea that business relationships are built through shared cocktail parties rather than proven competence and reliable service seems perfectly logical to everyone at this table except me. Emma probably knows all about the technical organizations. Aunt Rosa offers helpfully. You know, the engineering groups and construction associations. Technical organizations. As if the Arizona Contractors Association and the Commercial Real Estate Development Association are somehow less valuable than country clubs because they focus on actual industry knowledge rather than social connections. I excuse myself to use the restroom, needing a break from watching my family celebrate my professional demise. In the bathroom mirror, I study my reflection and wonder when I became invisible to these people. When did my contributions become so thoroughly discounted that they can plan the company's future without considering my input essential? When I return to the table, Victoria is discussing her plans to hire a marketing firm to rebrand Rodriguez Construction and Development. She wants a more sophisticated logo and promotional materials that better reflect our elevated market position. The fact that our current brand recognition comes from 15 years of completed projects and satisfied clients apparently carries no weight in her rebranding strategy. The server brings the check, and Mom immediately reaches for it with the generosity of someone celebrating with other people's money. Victoria will technically be paying for this dinner through company profits that I helped generate, though I doubt she understands that connection yet. As we prepare to leave, Victoria announces her plan to arrive at the office early tomorrow morning to get oriented and begin implementing her transition strategy. She asks if I can meet her at 7 a.m. to walk through our current projects and client relationships. The request comes with the assumption that I have nothing else to do with my time except facilitate her education about the business she now owns. In the parking lot, family members exchange hugs and well wishes for Victoria's success. Mom holds me a beat longer than necessary, her embrace feeling more like consolation than celebration. Emma, sweetie, I know this is an adjustment, but you'll see how wonderful this will be. Victoria needs you so much, and you'll have so much less pressure now that you don't have to worry about the big decisions. Less pressure. Because apparently being responsible for keeping a $25 million company operational while reporting to someone who doesn't understand the business is somehow easier than being responsible for strategic decisions based on 15 years of experience. I drive home through Phoenix streets lined with buildings that bear RCD signs, past developments we've completed and projects currently under construction. Each one represents problems solved, challenges overcome, relationships built through competence rather than inheritance. Tomorrow I'll have to explain all of this to someone who thinks construction is what happens when she's not paying attention. My apartment feels smaller tonight, as if the walls are closing in along with my options. I pour myself a glass of wine and sit on my balcony, looking out at the city lights that twinkle like stars fallen to earth. Somewhere out there, Victoria is probably planning her first day as CEO, blissfully unaware of how much she doesn't know about the empire she's inherited. Tomorrow I'll smile and answer her questions and pretend that teaching my replacement feels like anything other than professional suicide. Tomorrow I'll begin the process of watching someone else receive credit for systems I developed and relationships I built. Tomorrow I'll start learning how to be invisible in the company I helped create. But tonight, I allow myself to feel the full weight of what I've lost. Not just a company or an inheritance, but the validation that 15 years of dedication and excellence meant something to the man who raised me. Tonight, I grieve the daughter who believed her father saw her as more than just someone who's good with technical details. The next morning arrives with the kind of brutal Arizona heat that makes stepping outside feel like opening a furnace door. I'm already at the office by 6:30, sitting in my car in the parking lot, staring at the building that's been my second home for the past 15 years. The Rodriguez Construction and Development sign stretches across the front facade in bold red letters, but for the first time in my adult life, seeing it doesn't fill me with pride. Instead, it feels like reading my own obituary. Victoria's silver BMW pulls into Dad's reserved parking spot at exactly 7 a.m. She emerges from the air-conditioned comfort of her luxury sedan wearing a cream-colored suit that probably costs more than most of our construction workers make in a month. Her heels click across the asphalt with the confidence of someone who's never had to walk across gravel or climb scaffolding. She waves at me through my windshield with the enthusiasm of someone beginning an adventure rather than inheriting a responsibility. Inside the building, our receptionist Maria looks up with confusion as Victoria and I enter together. Maria has worked here for 8 years, long enough to know that Victoria's presence in the office typically signals a family emergency or holiday party. She starts to ask if everything is all right, then notices Victoria's proprietary stride toward Dad's office and falls silent with the intuition of someone sensing a major shift in workplace dynamics. Victoria pauses at Dad's office door, her hand resting on the handle like she's gathering courage for a momentous occasion. The space beyond that door contains 15 years of my life, project files I organized, client correspondence I managed, strategic plans I developed during countless late nights when everyone else was home with their families. She opens the door and steps inside with the reverence of someone entering a shrine, completely unaware that she's walking into the museum of my professional existence. "This is so overwhelming," she says, surveying the office with wide eyes. "There's so much stuff. 15 years of industry awards, photos from groundbreaking ceremonies, architectural renderings of completed projects, certificates from professional organizations, and client appreciation plaques reduced to stuff." I watch her examine Dad's desk, running her fingers along the edge like she's trying to absorb his business acumen through osmosis. The bronze trowel I gave him for Father's Day 10 years ago sits in its usual spot, engraved with, "For the man who builds dreams." Beside it, the framed photo from the Mesa Community Center dedication shows Dad and me standing with the mayor and city council, both of us wearing hard hats and genuine smiles. Victoria picks up the photo, studies it for a moment, then sets it down without comment. "Walk me through everything," she says, settling into Dad's chair with an air of someone trying on a costume that's several sizes too large. "I want to understand how the business operates." I spend the next 3 hours explaining systems I developed, processes I streamlined, and relationships I built from nothing. Victoria takes notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking questions that reveal the shocking depth of her ignorance about basic construction industry fundamentals. She wants to know why we need separate insurance policies for different types of projects. She asks if building permits are really necessary for minor renovations. She's confused about why we employ our own safety officer instead of just trusting contractors to follow regulations. Each question feels like a small knife cutting away pieces of my professional identity. This is the person who will now make decisions about projects that require understanding soil engineering, load calculations, and municipal code compliance. This is the person who will represent Rodriguez Construction and Development at industry meetings where technical competence matters more than social charm. By 10 a.m., we've barely scratched the surface of current projects, and Victoria is already looking overwhelmed. She keeps asking if we can simplify various processes or delegate technical decisions to subcontractors. The idea that the owner of a construction company should understand construction seems to strike her as unnecessarily burdensome. Let's take a break, she suggests, checking her phone for what I realize is the first time since we began. This is a lot to absorb all at once. I use the break to check my own messages and discover 3 urgent emails that arrived overnight. The Scottsdale Resort project has encountered unexpected rock formations that require immediate geological assessment. The Tempe office complex needs owner approval for material substitutions due to supply chain delays. The Phoenix Convention Center renovation requires a decision about structural modifications that could affect the project timeline and budget. Each issue represents the kind of technical challenge I've been handling routinely for years. Each requires understanding of engineering principles, construction regulations, and financial implications that Victoria couldn't begin to comprehend. Yet as the new owner, she's theoretically responsible for these decisions. When Victoria returns from her break, I show her the urgent messages and begin explaining the technical complexities involved in each situation. Her eyes glaze over somewhere between soil-bearing capacity and steel beam load ratings. She interrupts my explanation with a suggestion that reveals everything about how she views her new role. Emma, you obviously understand all this technical stuff so much better than I do. Why don't you just handle these decisions and let me know what you decided? I trust your judgment completely. Trust my judgment. While refusing to give me the authority that would make my judgment legally meaningful. She wants me to solve problems while she receives credit for solutions. She wants me to take responsibility while she maintains control. Victoria, these decisions require owner approval because they involve budget modifications and contract changes. The clients and contractors need to hear directly from whoever has legal authority. She frowns, clearly frustrated by the complexity of actually running the business she's inherited. Can't you just tell them you're acting on my behalf? Or maybe we can set up some kind of system where you have permission to make these decisions automatically. The casual way she suggests delegating legal responsibility for multi-million-dollar projects reveals how little she understands about business ownership. She wants the prestige and profits of running RCD without the burden of actually running it. I spend another hour walking through our client relationships, starting with the Henderson Group, our largest commercial client. They've contracted with us for 8 major projects over the past 5 years, representing nearly 30% of our annual revenue. I've personally managed every aspect of this relationship, from initial proposals to final inspections. Their project manager, David Chen, calls me directly when issues arise because he trusts my technical expertise and problem-solving abilities. David will want to meet with you soon to discuss the upcoming mixed-use development downtown, I explain. It's a $40 million project that could set us up for major growth in the commercial sector. Victoria brightens at the mention of $40 million, apparently hearing only the financial potential without considering the operational complexity required to manage such a massive undertaking. That sounds perfect. I've always thought we should focus more on high-profile projects. When can we schedule this meeting? The enthusiasm in her voice makes my stomach drop. She's already envisioning herself in presentations with major developers, discussing projects she couldn't manage if her life depended on it. She has no idea that David Chen will ask detailed questions about construction methodology, timeline projections, and resource allocation. She doesn't understand that commercial developers choose contractors based on proven competence, not inherited authority. By noon, we've covered maybe 20% of our active projects, and Victoria is already showing signs of information overload. She keeps checking her phone and glancing toward the window like a student trapped in a lecture about subjects that bore her. When Maria announces that we have sandwiches delivered for lunch, Victoria jumps at the excuse to take another break. During lunch, Victoria shifts the conversation away from technical business matters toward her vision for the company's future. She wants to expand into luxury residential markets, develop relationships with high-end architects, and position RCD as the premium construction firm for Phoenix's wealthy elite. Her enthusiasm for these goals is matched only by her ignorance about what achieving them would require. I think we should start attending more social events where we can network with potential clients, she suggests between bites of her quinoa salad. The art gallery openings I go to are full of people who own beautiful homes and businesses. They're exactly the kind of clients we should be pursuing. The idea that construction contracts are won at art gallery openings rather than through competitive bidding processes based on technical qualifications and cost proposals apparently makes perfect sense to her. She's confusing social networking with business development, not understanding that our industry values proven performance over cocktail party charm. After lunch, I try to explain our financial structure, including cash flow management, bonding requirements, and equipment financing. Victoria's attention spans approximately 15 minutes before she starts asking if we can hire a financial manager to handle all the numbers stuff. The concept that a business owner should understand their company's financial position seems as foreign to her as reading blueprints. By mid-afternoon, 3 more urgent issues have emerged that require immediate owner attention. A subcontractor on the Mesa project is threatening to walk off the job due to a payment dispute. The City Planning Commission needs clarification about zoning compliance for the downtown renovation. A potential new client wants to schedule a meeting next week to discuss a major office complex development. Each situation requires knowledge that Victoria doesn't possess and decision-making authority that she's legally obligated to exercise but practically unable to handle. I watch her face grow more frustrated with each new challenge, as if the business is being deliberately difficult rather than simply operating according to industry standards. This is impossible, she finally admits, her carefully maintained composure cracking slightly. How did Dad manage all of this? The question hangs in the air between us like smoke from a fire nobody wants to acknowledge. Dad managed it because he understood the business from the ground up. He started as a laborer, learned every trade, studied every aspect of construction management until he could solve problems that stumped engineers with graduate degrees. He earned his authority through decades of competence, not inheritance. But Victoria doesn't want to hear about earning authority. She wants shortcuts, delegation, and systems that will allow her to maintain control without developing competence. She wants the prestige of ownership without the burden of actually owning anything more complicated than her art collection. As the day wears on, I realize I'm not training my replacement. I'm enabling someone to fake their way through responsibilities they'll never truly understand. Victoria isn't learning to run RCD, she's learning to manage the appearance of running it while I handle the actual work of keeping the company operational. By 5 p.m., we've barely scratched the surface of what Victoria needs to know, and she's already looking exhausted by the mental effort required to pay attention to information that doesn't immediately fascinate her. She announces that she needs to leave early for a dinner engagement, some charity fundraiser that she committed to attending months ago. "Emma, you've been so incredibly helpful today," she says, gathering her things with obvious relief at escaping further education. "I feel so much more confident knowing you're here to handle all the complex technical aspects." Handle all the complex technical aspects while she handles all the credit, authority, and profits that come from owning a business she couldn't operate independently if her life depended on it. After she leaves, I stay late reviewing the urgent issues that accumulated during her orientation session. I draft responses to client inquiries, coordinate with project managers about schedule adjustments, and resolve the payment dispute that threatened to derail the Mesa project. This is what actually running RCD looks like: solving problems, making decisions, and taking responsibility for outcomes. By 8 p.m., the office is empty except for security lights and the distant hum of computers left in sleep mode. I sit in my cubicle, surrounded by 15 years of work that officially belongs to someone who spent one day learning about it and immediately began looking for ways to avoid understanding it better. My computer screen displays the architectural rendering for the Phoenix Convention Center renovation, a project I've been developing for 8 months. The design incorporates innovative sustainability features and construction techniques that will establish RCD as a leader in green building practices. Victoria saw this rendering today and commented that the building looked very practical, in a tone that suggested practicality was somehow disappointing. Tomorrow she'll arrive expecting me to continue managing the business while she focuses on vision and networking. Tomorrow I'll solve problems she doesn't understand while she takes credit for solutions she couldn't develop. Tomorrow I'll watch someone else receive recognition for achievements that represent my life's work. The bronze trowel on Dad's desk catches the hallway light through his open office door. For the man who builds dreams, the engraving reads, "But dreams built by invisible hands apparently belong to whoever inherits the tools, not whoever wielded them." 3 days into Victoria's reign as RCD's new owner, I find myself standing in Dad's office at dawn, staring at the bronze trowel that's become my symbol of everything lost and everything I'm finally ready to reclaim. The morning light filtering through the blinds catches the engraved words that once meant so much to a man who understood the difference between building dreams and inheriting them. Victoria hasn't arrived yet, though she's scheduled to meet with the Henderson Group at 9 a.m. about the $40 million downtown development project. Yesterday, I spent 4 hours preparing briefing materials that explain the technical complexities, budget considerations, and timeline requirements for this massive undertaking. Victoria skimmed through my 20-page analysis in 15 minutes, then asked if I could summarize the key points in a format that would be easier to digest during the meeting. Easier to digest. As if 4 months of research, engineering, consultations, and financial projections could be reduced to bullet points that wouldn't strain her attention span. I've been awake since 4 a.m., lying in bed and replaying the conversation I had with Maria yesterday afternoon. Our receptionist, who's worked here longer than anyone except me, pulled me aside after Victoria left early for another charity event. "Miss Emma," she said in the careful tone she uses when discussing sensitive topics, "the construction workers are asking questions. They want to know if Miss Victoria understands what we do here." The construction workers. The men and women who've worked alongside me for years, who've seen me solve problems and make decisions that kept projects moving and paychecks coming. They're worried about their job security under an owner who needed me to explain why we require building permits. "What kind of questions?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. They're wondering if she knows enough about construction to keep the company running. Some of them are talking about looking for other jobs, just in case. Just in case. The phrase that summarizes everyone's confidence in Victoria's ability to maintain what Dad and I built together. Now I stand in the office that should have been mine, holding the trowel that represents everything Dad taught me about building something meaningful with your own hands. The weight of it feels heavier this morning, like it's absorbing all the disappointment and frustration I've been carrying since the will reading. Behind me, I hear Victoria's heels clicking across the lobby floor. She's early today, probably nervous about the Henderson Group meeting. I slip the trowel into my purse quickly, a gesture that feels both petty and profoundly necessary. Some symbols are too important to leave behind when everything else has already been taken. "Emma, thank goodness you're here," Victoria says, rushing into the office with the frantic energy of someone who's realized they're in over their head. "I've been thinking about the Henderson meeting, and I'm not sure I understand all the technical details well enough to answer their questions." Technical details. Her euphemism for the fundamental knowledge required to operate the business. She owns. "I've prepared comprehensive briefing materials," I remind her, gesturing toward the folder on Dad's desk that contains everything she needs to know about the project. "Yes, but it's so much information. What if they ask questions that aren't covered in your notes? What if they want to discuss engineering specifications or construction methodology? What if they expect the owner of a construction company to understand construction?" The possibility seems to terrify her. Victoria paces behind Dad's desk, her anxiety palpable. She's finally beginning to understand that owning a business involves more than just receiving profits and making grand strategic pronouncements. She's discovering that clients expect competence, not just confidence. "Maybe you should attend the meeting with me," she suggests, trying to make the request sound casual rather than desperate. "You know so much more about the technical aspects, and David Chen already has a relationship with you." David Chen has a relationship with me because I've spent 2 years proving my competence through successful project management and reliable communication. He trusts me to understand his needs, solve his problems, and deliver results on schedule and within budget. He's never met Victoria, and when he does, he'll immediately recognize that she lacks the technical knowledge necessary to manage a $40 million construction project. "Victoria, you're the owner now. Clients need to build relationships with you, not continue relying on me as an intermediary." The truth of this statement hits her like cold water. She stops pacing and looks at me with something approaching panic in her eyes. "But what if I say something wrong? What if I make commitments we can't keep or quote prices that don't make sense? What if the person running the company doesn't know how to run the company?" We're finally approaching the heart of the problem. I spend the next hour coaching Victoria through potential questions and appropriate responses, essentially creating a script that will allow her to fake competence for the duration of one meeting. She takes notes furiously, asking me to repeat key phrases and important numbers until she can recite them with something resembling confidence. At 8:30, David Chen arrives with his development team. I watch through the conference room windows as Victoria greets them with the polished charm she's perfected through years of gallery openings and charity events. She looks the part. Of a successful business owner, well-dressed, articulate, confident. Only I know that her confidence is built on 15 minutes of cramming rather than 15 years of experience. The meeting begins smoothly enough. Victoria delivers the prepared remarks I helped her rehearse, discussing project timelines and budget estimates with the authority of someone who actually understands what the numbers mean. David nods approvingly as she outlines our capabilities and past successes, all of which I documented in the briefing materials she studied like a student preparing for a final exam. But then David asks the question I knew was coming, the one that can't be answered with rehearsed talking points. Victoria, we're concerned about the soil conditions at the downtown site. Our geological survey revealed some unexpected rock formations that could affect foundation design. How would Rodriguez Construction handle potential modifications to the structural engineering? Victoria's confident expression freezes. She glances toward me with barely concealed panic, realizing that her cramming session didn't cover geological, engineering and soil-bearing capacity calculations. The silence stretches uncomfortably as she searches for an answer that doesn't exist in her limited knowledge base. That's an excellent question, David, she finally manages. Emma, would you mind explaining our approach to geological challenges? And there it is. The moment when the illusion of competent ownership crumbles and everyone in the room understands the real power dynamic at Rodriguez Construction and Development. I explain the engineering considerations involved in modified foundation design, the additional costs associated with rock excavation, and the timeline adjustments required for geological consultation. David and his team direct their follow-up questions to me, instinctively recognizing that I possess the technical knowledge they need for their project. Victoria sits at the head of the conference table, legally responsible for the company but practically irrelevant to the technical discussion happening around her. She nods at appropriate moments and makes encouraging sounds, but everyone in the room understands that she's decoration rather than decision-maker. After the meeting, David pulls me aside in the hallway. His expression is carefully neutral, but I can see the concern in his eyes. Emma, I've worked with your father for years, and I've always appreciated the technical expertise Rodriguez Construction brings to complex projects. I hope that level of competence will continue under the new ownership structure. His diplomatic language can't disguise what he's really asking. Will the person who actually understands construction still be making the important decisions, or are we expected to trust someone who clearly doesn't know what she's doing? The company's commitment to technical excellence remains unchanged, I assure him, which is true as long as I'm still here to maintain that excellence despite the change in official leadership. David nods, but I can see him filing away this information for future reference. He's already wondering whether Rodriguez Construction and Development will remain a reliable partner under Victoria's ownership, or whether he needs to start developing relationships with our competitors. After David's team leaves, Victoria practically collapses into Dad's office chair. The strain of maintaining professional composure while completely out of her depth has clearly exhausted her. That was horrible, she admits, dropping the pretense of confident leadership. I felt like a fraud sitting there while you answered all the important questions. You felt like a fraud because you are a fraud, I think, but don't say. Instead, I maintain the supportive tone expected of a loyal employee. These meetings will get easier as you learn more about the business, I offer, though we both know this is optimistic at best. Victoria looks at me with something approaching desperation. Emma, I need you to handle the technical meetings from now on. I'll focus on the relationship building and strategic vision, but you clearly understand the construction aspects better than I ever will. There it is. The explicit acknowledgement that she wants me to do the job while she takes the credit. She wants to be the face of the company while I remain the brain, the hands, and the institutional knowledge that actually makes everything work. Victoria, clients like David Chen expect to work directly with ownership. If I'm always answering the technical questions, they'll start wondering who's really running the company. But you are really running the company, she exclaims, then immediately looks horrified that she said this out loud. I mean, you're running the operational aspects while I handle the bigger picture. The bigger picture. Her euphemism for the parts of business ownership that don't require actual knowledge or skill. That afternoon, 3 more situations arise that demonstrate the fundamental problem with Victoria's approach to running RCD. A subcontractor calls with questions about material specifications that she can't answer. A city inspector wants to discuss code compliance issues that she doesn't understand. A potential new client requests a preliminary assessment for a mixed-use development that requires technical expertise she doesn't possess. Each situation requires my intervention to prevent misunderstandings, delays, or lost opportunities. Each interaction reinforces the reality that Victoria may own Rodriguez Construction and Development on paper, but I'm still the person keeping it operational in practice. By 5 p.m., I'm emotionally and physically exhausted from a day spent propping up someone else's illusion of competence. Victoria has left early again, this time for a wine tasting event that she considers important for networking with potential high-end clients. The fact that construction contracts aren't typically negotiated over Chardonnay apparently hasn't occurred to her. I sit alone in my cubicle, surrounded by the work that defines my professional identity but no longer belongs to me in any legal sense. My computer screen displays project timelines I developed, client correspondence I've maintained, and strategic plans I created during countless nights when normal people were home with their families. The bronze trowel weighs heavy in my purse, a physical reminder of everything I've lost and everything I'm finally ready to fight for. Dad gave that trowel a place of honor on his desk because he understood that building dreams requires more than just dreaming. It requires skill, knowledge, dedication, and the willingness to get your hands dirty in service of something larger than yourself. Victoria wants the dreams without the building. She wants the success without the struggle, the authority without the competence, the profits without the problems. She wants to own something she'll never truly understand, control something she could never create, and receive credit for achievements that represent other people's life's work. Tomorrow I'll have to smile and continue enabling her illusion of leadership. Tomorrow I'll answer more technical questions she can't handle and solve more problems she doesn't understand. Tomorrow I'll watch David Chen and other clients gradually lose confidence in Rodriguez Construction and Development's future under ownership that doesn't understand the business. But tonight, I hold Dad's trowel and remember what he taught me about the difference between inheriting something and earning it. Tonight, I acknowledge that 15 years of invisible contribution doesn't automatically become visible just because the person receiving credit changes. Tonight, I admit that working harder and achieving more won't ever be enough if the people with power don't value competence over convenience. The trowel's engraving catches the last light from my desk lamp, for the man who builds dreams. But maybe it's time for the woman who builds dreams to stop letting other people claim them. Saturday morning finds me in my apartment, surrounded by bankers' boxes that contain 15 years of my professional life. The coffee grows cold on my kitchen counter as I methodically sort through documents that tell the story of who I really am versus who my family thinks I am. Each file folder represents months of work, each contract represents relationships I built from nothing, each award represents recognition from people who actually understand what I do for a living. The first box contains project files from my earliest years at RCD, when I was supposedly just learning the business. Here's the documentation from the Chandler Medical Plaza, a project Dad almost lost when the original project manager quit without notice. I was 24 years old, technically just an assistant, but I stepped in and coordinated 16 subcontractors through a complex renovation that had to be completed without disrupting hospital operations. The project finished 2 weeks ahead of schedule and 5% under budget. Dad never mentioned my role in saving that contract when he told the story at industry events. In his version, he personally managed the crisis through decisive leadership and careful planning. The truth lives in these files, daily reports I wrote, coordination meetings I scheduled, problems I solved while he attended networking lunches with other contractors. I pull out the photo from the project completion ceremony. Dad stands with the hospital administrator and the mayor, all three men in expensive suits, shaking hands in front of the newly renovated emergency department entrance. I'm visible in the background, wearing a hard hat and safety vest, holding a clipboard and talking to the electrical contractor about final inspections. Nobody's looking at me. Nobody's acknowledging that the person actually responsible for the project's success is the young woman treated as part of the scenery. The second box contains files from the Paradise Valley Resort expansion, a prestigious project that established RCD's reputation in luxury hospitality construction. The resort owner, Margaret Sinclair, specifically requested our company after researching our track record with high-end developments. What she didn't know was that I had personally managed every one of those high-end developments that caught her attention. I remember the day Mrs. Sinclair came to our office for the initial consultation. Dad was in Tucson dealing with a permit issue, so I handled the meeting alone. We spent 3 hours discussing design challenges, construction timelines, and budget considerations. Mrs. Sinclair left that meeting convinced that Rodriguez Construction and Development possessed exactly the expertise her project required. When Dad returned from Tucson, I briefed him on the conversation and handed him a detailed proposal I'd prepared during the evening after Mrs. Sinclair's visit. He reviewed my work, made minor adjustments to the pricing structure, and presented it to the client the following week as his own strategic vision for the project. The Paradise Valley Resort contract was worth $8 million and led to 3 additional luxury hotel projects over the next 2 years. Industry publications featured Dad in articles about visionary leadership in hospitality construction. The Arizona Contractors Association gave him their Excellence in Commercial Development Award. The Phoenix Business Journal included him in their 40 under 40 list, even though he was 42 at the time. I have all the documentation right here: Mrs. Sinclair's initial inquiry, my meeting notes, the technical specifications I researched, the vendor relationships I cultivated, the construction challenges I anticipated and solved. I managed every aspect of that project from concept to completion, but Dad's name is on the award plaques and newspaper articles. The third box contains my personal achievement collection, the awards and recognition that came directly to me rather than being filtered through Dad's public image. Here's my certificate from the Arizona Society of Professional Engineers, recognizing my innovative approach to sustainable construction practices. Here's the letter from the Green Building Council, thanking me for developing cost-effective methods for LEED certification in commercial projects. These awards represent recognition from my peers, people who understand the technical expertise required to excel in construction management. But they're the kind of achievements that never get mentioned at family dinners or business networking events. They're too technical, too specialized, too focused on actual competence rather than social visibility. I find the folder containing correspondence from clients who specifically requested my involvement in their projects. David Chen from the Henderson Group wrote to Dad 3 years ago, saying, "Please ensure that Emma Rodriguez remains the primary point of contact for all Henderson projects. Her technical knowledge and problem-solving abilities have been invaluable to our success." Robert Martinez from Phoenix Development Corporation sent a similar letter. "Emma's expertise in municipal permitting and code compliance has saved our company hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential delays and redesign costs. We consider her an essential partner in our ongoing development efforts." These letters exist in my personal files because Dad never shared them with anyone. Client praise for my work didn't enhance his reputation the way client praise for his work did, so he simply ignored evidence that contradicted his narrative about family business leadership. The fourth box contains financial analysis that tells the real story of RCD's growth and profitability. I've tracked every project I managed, every cost-saving innovation I implemented, every efficiency improvement I developed. The numbers are stark and undeniable. My direct contributions account for approximately 60% of the company's revenue growth over the past 8 years. The Mesa Transit Center project alone generated $3 million in profit, primarily because I negotiated bulk purchasing agreements that reduced material costs by 12%. The Scottsdale Corporate Park series brought in steady revenue for 3 years running because I maintained relationships with property management companies that led to repeat contracts. The downtown renovation projects established our reputation in historic preservation, opening an entirely new market segment that now represents 20% of our annual business. I developed the project management software that reduced our administrative overhead by 30%. I created the safety protocols that earned us preferred contractor status with 3 major insurance companies. I established the vendor relationships that give us priority access to materials and equipment during high-demand periods. Every innovation, every efficiency, every strategic advancement that made Rodriguez Construction and Development successful over the past decade can be traced directly to my work. Yet when industry publications write about our company's success, they interview Dad about his leadership vision and strategic planning. They ask Victoria about bringing fresh perspectives to family business traditions. They never ask me anything, because I'm not visible enough to be considered worth interviewing. The fifth box contains the most painful documents, family photos and newspaper clippings that show how consistently I've been erased from our public narrative. Here's the Phoenix Business Journal article about Rodriguez family legacy in construction, featuring a full-page photo of Dad, Mom, Victoria, and Michael standing in front of our headquarters building. I'm not in the photo because I was on site, managing the emergency repair of a water main break that threatened to shut down the Tempe office complex project. Here's the Society page coverage of Victoria's gallery opening, where she's quoted discussing the sophisticated aesthetic sensibility that runs in the Rodriguez family, and the importance of bringing artistic vision to traditionally practical endeavors. The article mentions that she's the daughter of prominent construction executive Robert Rodriguez, but doesn't mention that she has a sister who actually understands construction. Here's the program from the Arizona Contractors Association annual dinner, where Dad received their Lifetime Achievement Award. His acceptance speech, reproduced in full, thanks my family for their unwavering support, and my daughter Victoria for her fresh perspective on business development. No mention of the daughter who attended that dinner alone because everyone assumed I was there in a secretarial capacity rather than as a key company executive. The sixth box contains evidence of opportunities lost because my contributions weren't properly recognized or credited. 3 major clients specifically requested meetings with the Rodriguez daughter who handles technical matters over the past 2 years. Dad redirected those meetings to Victoria, assuming they wanted to discuss aesthetic or public relations aspects of their projects. The confusion that resulted from these misdirected meetings cost us 2 contracts worth a combined $12 million. The clients wanted technical expertise and got social charm instead. They left those meetings convinced that Rodriguez Construction and Development didn't understand their complex engineering requirements. I have copies of the follow-up correspondence where these clients explained their decision to work with our competitors. While we appreciated Victoria's enthusiasm, we need a contractor who can demonstrate deep technical knowledge of seismic engineering and soil stabilization. We were hoping to work with someone who understood the specialized requirements of medical facility construction, but your team seemed focused on general aesthetic considerations. Our competitors got those contracts because they sent engineers and construction specialists to meetings where we sent someone whose qualifications included a degree in art history and extensive experience planning charity events. The 7th box contains my education and professional development records, documentation of the continuous learning that's kept me current with industry innovations and regulatory changes. I've completed over 200 hours of continuing education. In the past 5 years, attending seminars on everything from green building technologies to safety management systems. Here's my certificate from the Advanced Construction Management program at Arizona State University, a graduate-level curriculum I completed while working full-time and managing our 3 largest projects simultaneously. Here's my certification from the Project Management Institute, recognizing expertise in complex project coordination and resource allocation. Here's my designation as a lead accredited professional, qualifying me to oversee sustainable construction projects. Victoria's educational credentials, by comparison, consist of her undergraduate degree in art history and a certificate in nonprofit management from a weekend workshop she attended 2 years ago. But she's the one inheriting a construction company while I'm the one expected to be grateful for continued employment in a technical support role. The 8th box contains personal correspondence that reveals how my family has systematically dismissed my professional identity. Here's the email Mom sent to Uncle Carlos when he asked about career opportunities for his son who just graduated with an engineering degree. Robert has been grooming Victoria to take over the business leadership, but Emma handles a lot of the day-to-day technical details. She might be able to help your son understand the practical side of construction work. Technical details. Day-to-day operations. Practical side. Language that reduces 15 years of strategic leadership to clerical work that anyone could handle with basic training. Here's the text message Victoria sent to her college roommate when asked about the family business. Emma loves all the engineering stuff and project management. She's super detail-oriented and really good at handling the boring parts of construction. I'm more focused on the big picture vision and client relationships. The boring parts of construction. As if ensuring that buildings don't collapse, projects finish on time, and budgets stay within acceptable parameters is somehow less important than schmoozing with clients at wine tastings. The 9th box contains my performance evaluations and salary reviews, documents that reveal the systematic undervaluation of my contributions. Despite bringing in more revenue than any other employee, solving more complex problems, and maintaining better client relationships, my compensation has consistently lagged behind industry standards for professionals with my experience and responsibilities. Dad justified my below-market salary by pointing out the job security and advancement opportunities available in a family business. He promised that my loyalty and dedication would be rewarded when the time came for succession planning. He assured me that family members who proved their value would be recognized accordingly when ownership transferred to the next generation. Those promises were apparently worthless, which I should have realized when Dad consistently promoted male employees with less experience and fewer achievements to positions with more authority and better compensation. I should have understood that being the owner's daughter didn't guarantee fair treatment. It actually made me more vulnerable to exploitation because family members are expected to accept less in the name of loyalty. The 10th box contains my personal journals from the past 5 years, documentation of my growing awareness that something was fundamentally wrong with how my family viewed my contributions. I started writing these entries as a way to process the frustration of being consistently overlooked despite outperforming colleagues who received more recognition and better opportunities. Reading them now, I see the progression of my disillusionment clearly mapped across hundreds of pages. Early entries focus on specific incidents of unfair treatment, assuming they were aberrations rather than patterns. Middle entries show growing Awareness that these incidents weren't isolated but part of a systematic problem. Recent entries reveal my desperate attempts to rationalize staying in a situation that was slowly destroying my self-worth. Here's an entry from 2 years ago. Dad introduced me to the Glendale mayor as my daughter who keeps track of all our projects. Not the project manager, not the person responsible for coordinating municipal relationships, just someone who keeps track. How do I build professional credibility when my own father reduces my role to glorified bookkeeping? Here's one. From 18 months ago, Victoria mentioned at dinner that she's thinking about getting more involved in the family business after her gallery internship ends. Mom was thrilled, talking about how wonderful it would be to have someone with vision and creativity contributing to RCD's future. Apparently 15 years of actual contribution doesn't compare to potential contribution from someone with the right aesthetic sensibilities. Here's one from last year. Had lunch with Sarah Chen today. She asked why I don't start my own construction firm, given my experience and industry relationships. I tried to explain about family loyalty and honoring Dad's legacy, but the words sounded hollow even to me. Maybe I'm not staying out of loyalty. Maybe I'm staying out of fear that I'm not as capable as I think I am. The final entry, written just 3 days before Dad died, cuts deepest of all. Sometimes I wonder if I've wasted my entire adult life trying to earn recognition from people who are fundamentally incapable of seeing me clearly. Maybe the problem isn't that I haven't done enough. Maybe the problem is that I'm invisible to them by design, not accident. By 3 p.m., I've reviewed the contents of all 10 boxes, and the evidence is overwhelming. I haven't been overlooked or undervalued. Due to misunderstanding or miscommunication, I've been systematically erased from the narrative of my own professional life by people who benefited from my work while denying my agency. The documentation tells a story that contradicts everything my family believes about itself and everything they've told me about my role in our business. I'm not the technical support person who handles details while others manage strategy. I am the strategic leader whose work has been systematically attributed to others. I'm not the loyal daughter who lacks vision and leadership potential. I'm the visionary leader whose innovations have been claimed by people who lack the competence to develop them independently. I'm not the family member who should be grateful for employment and security. I'm the family member whose work has provided security and prosperity for everyone else. The bronze trowel sits on my coffee table, surrounded by evidence of everything it represents. Dad's engraving reads, "For the man who builds dreams," but these documents prove that the dreams attributed to him were actually built by someone else. Someone whose contributions were systematically minimized, whose achievements were routinely credited to others, whose professional identity was deliberately obscured to maintain narratives that served everyone except her. I think about Victoria struggling through the Henderson Group meeting, unable to answer basic questions about the business she now owns. I think about David Chen's diplomatic concern about maintaining technical excellence under new leadership. I think about our construction workers wondering whether they should start looking for new jobs before the company collapses under incompetent management. Most of all, I think about Dad's final conversation with me, just 2 weeks before he died. We were reviewing plans for the Phoenix Convention Center renovation when he suddenly looked up from the blueprints and said, "Emma, you understand this business better than anyone. I hope you know how much I depend on your expertise." At the time, I thought he was finally acknowledging my value. Now I realize he was expressing regret for a decision he'd already made but couldn't bring himself to change. He knew I deserved to inherit the company I'd spent 15 years building. He also knew he was going to give it to someone else. The weight of that realization settles over me like a heavy blanket. Dad saw my competence clearly enough to depend on it daily, but he didn't see my worth clearly enough to reward it appropriately. He understood that I was essential to RCD's success, but he didn't believe that made me worthy of ownership. I was good enough to build his empire but not good enough to inherit it. I was competent enough to solve his problems but not visible enough to receive his recognition. I was valuable enough to exploit but not important enough to elevate. The truth isn't that Dad didn't see me. The truth is that he saw me exactly as he wanted to see me, capable but contained, essential but subordinate, valuable but not quite valuable enough. That realization changes everything. The problem isn't that I need to work harder or achieve more to earn recognition. The problem is that I've been seeking validation from people who are invested in keeping me invisible. I've been trying to prove my worth to people who profit from denying it. As the afternoon sun slants through my apartment windows, illuminating the documentary evidence of my erased professional life, I finally understand what needs to happen next. I can't change how my family sees me, but I can change how I see myself. I can't control their narrative about my value, but I can control my own story about what I'm worth. The bronze trowel catches the light one more time, and I read the engraving with new eyes. For the man who builds dreams. But maybe it's time for the woman who actually built those dreams to stop pretending she didn't, stop accepting credit for others, and start demanding recognition for herself. Tomorrow I'll return to RCD and continue enabling Victoria's illusion of competence while my own expertise remains invisible. But tonight, surrounded by proof of everything I've accomplished and evidence of how systematically it's been denied, I'm finally ready to stop building other people's dreams and start claiming my own. Monday morning arrives with the kind of oppressive Arizona heat that makes the air shimmer like liquid mercury. I'm already in the RCD parking lot when my phone buzzes with a call from Mr. Henderson's law office. The timing feels strange, it's barely 7 a.m., and attorneys don't typically conduct business before their second cup of coffee. Miss Rodriguez? This is Catherine Walsh from Henderson & Associates. Mr. Henderson needs to see you this morning. It's regarding additional documents from your father's estate that require immediate attention. Additional documents. The phrase sends a chill through me despite the climbing temperature outside. What kind of documents? I'm not authorized to discuss the details over the phone, but Mr. Henderson was quite specific that you should come in before 10 a.m. He mentioned that certain time-sensitive conditions needed to be addressed. Time-sensitive conditions. My father has been dead for exactly 2 weeks, and suddenly there are mysterious documents with deadlines attached. I agree to meet at 9 a.m., my mind racing through possibilities while I watch Victoria's BMW pull into what used to be Dad's parking space. She emerges from her air-conditioned luxury sedan wearing another outfit that costs more than our average worker's weekly paycheck. Today it's a powder blue suit that screams, trust fund baby playing. Dress up as business executive. Her confidence has grown slightly over the past week, bolstered by successfully navigating several meetings where I provided all the technical knowledge while she provided the appearance of leadership. Emma. Perfect timing, she calls out, waving a manila envelope with obvious excitement. I've been thinking about our expansion strategy, and I have some really innovative ideas to discuss. Innovative ideas? From someone who needed me to explain why we require separate contracts for different phases of construction. Victoria follows me into the building, chattering about her vision for transforming RCD into a boutique construction firm specializing in luxury residential and high-end commercial projects. She's apparently spent the weekend researching our competitors and has concluded that we need to pivot toward more sophisticated clientele who appreciate quality craftsmanship and aesthetic excellence. The fact that we already serve sophisticated clientele who appreciate quality craftsmanship seems to have escaped her notice. The Henderson Group, Phoenix Development Corporation, and the dozen other major clients who trust us with multi-million-dollar projects apparently don't qualify as high-end in Victoria's assessment. I've been thinking we should rebrand, she continues, settling into Dad's office chair with increasing familiarity. Something like Rodriguez Luxury Construction or Rodriguez Design Build. Something that sounds more upscale than just Rodriguez Construction and Development. Rebrand. Change the name that Dad spent 30 years building into a recognized symbol of reliability and expertise because Victoria thinks it sounds insufficiently pretentious. Victoria, our brand recognition is one of our most valuable assets. Clients choose us because they know what the Rodriguez name represents in terms of quality and dependability. She waves away my concern with the casual dismissal of someone who's never had to build a reputation from scratch. Oh, we'd keep the Rodriguez part obviously. I'm just talking about positioning ourselves more strategically in the luxury market. Strategic positioning. Business school buzzwords applied to an industry she doesn't understand by someone who's never developed a strategy more complex than choosing wine for a gallery opening. At 8:30, I excuse myself for the mysterious meeting at Henderson & Associates, leaving Victoria with instructions to review the project status reports I've prepared for this week's scheduled meetings. She nods distractedly, already focused on sketching logo concepts in a legal pad that should contain notes about construction schedules and budget concerns. The law office feels different this morning, charged with an energy that makes the receptionists speak in hushed tones and the secretaries avoid eye contact. Mr. Henderson greets me personally instead of having me wait in the reception area, his expression carefully neutral in a way that suggests significant developments lurk behind his professional composure. Emma, thank you for coming on such short notice. Please, have a seat. He settles behind his massive desk with the deliberate movements of someone preparing to deliver information that will fundamentally alter someone's understanding of reality. The manila folder in front of him appears thick enough to contain documents that could reshape my entire future. Your father left specific instructions about the timing of this meeting. He wanted you to experience exactly 2 weeks of the current ownership arrangement before receiving what he called the complete picture. The complete picture. As if everything I've endured since the will reading was somehow incomplete, just the opening act of a longer performance. Mr. Henderson opens the folder and removes a document that bears Dad's signature and an official seal. This is a codicil to your father's will, executed 6 months before his death and properly witnessed according to Arizona state law. It modifies the inheritance distribution outlined in the original document. A Codicil. A legal amendment that changes everything I thought I knew about Dad's final wishes. Emma, your father never intended for Victoria to permanently inherit Rodriguez Construction and Development. The original will was designed as a test. A test. 2 weeks of professional humiliation, family dismissal, and systematic erasure of my contributions was a test. Mr. Henderson slides the document across his desk, and I read it with hands that tremble slightly despite my efforts to maintain composure. The legal language is dense and formal, but the essential message emerges clearly as I work through the clauses and conditions. If my daughter Emma Rodriguez demonstrates her indispensable value to Rodriguez Construction and Development by maintaining operations and solving critical problems during the 30-day period following the initial will reading, and if the family treats her with the respect and recognition she deserves during this period, then the company shall revert to Emma's ownership, with Victoria retaining a 20% stake as silent partner. I read the paragraph twice, then a third time, as the implications sink into my consciousness like stones dropping into still water. However, the document continues, if Emma is taken for granted, her contributions are minimized, or she is expected to serve in a subordinate role despite her superior qualifications and experience, then Emma shall receive full ownership of Rodriguez Construction and Development, along with all assets, intellectual property, and business relationships, effective immediately upon the 30-day evaluation period. Full ownership. Not partnership, not shared control, not gracious inclusion in decisions about the company I built. Complete ownership of everything I've spent 15 years creating. Mr. Henderson retrieves another folder, this one even thicker than the first. Your father spent the last year of his life documenting your contributions to RCD's success. He kept detailed records of every project you managed, every innovation you developed, every client relationship you built. He also kept records of how credit was distributed within the family and professional community. The folder contains hundreds of pages of documentation, project reports with my name as primary manager, client correspondence praising my expertise, financial analyses showing my direct impact on company profitability, photographs from construction sites where I'm clearly the person directing operations while Dad poses for ceremonial pictures. Robert was very specific about his reasoning. Mr. Henderson continues. He suspected that your contributions were being systematically undervalued and that your potential for leadership was being overlooked in favor of traditional gender expectations and birth order assumptions. Traditional gender expectations. Dad saw what I couldn't admit to myself, that I was being held to different standards because I was a daughter rather than a son, expected to be supportive rather than assertive, valuable rather than visible. He designed this test to determine whether the family could recognize your worth independently, or whether external intervention would be necessary to ensure you received appropriate recognition for your achievements. External intervention. A legal document that forces acknowledgement of value that should have been obvious to anyone paying attention. I flip through page after page of documentation that tells the story of my professional life from Dad's perspective rather than my own. Here's a memo he wrote after the Paradise Valley Resort project. Emma's technical expertise and project management skills were solely responsible for this contract's success. My role was limited to client relations and ceremonial responsibilities. Here's a note from last year's budget planning session. Emma's cost-saving innovations and efficiency improvements have increased company profitability by 37% over the past 5 years. Her strategic vision has positioned RCD for sustained growth in emerging market segments. Here's an evaluation written just 3 months before his death. Emma possesses every qualification necessary for company leadership. Her technical knowledge, business acumen, and client relationships exceed my own at the same stage of career development. She deserves ownership of the enterprise she has been instrumental in building. Every page contradicts the narrative my family has constructed about my role in RCD's success. Dad saw my contributions clearly enough to document them extensively, even while maintaining public appearances that suggested Victoria was being groomed for leadership. Why didn't he just leave me the company directly? I ask, my voice sounding strange in the hushed formality of the law office. Mr. Henderson removes his glasses and cleans them with deliberate precision, a gesture that buys him time to choose his words carefully. Robert wanted you to understand your own worth independent of his validation. He believed that if you experienced explicit devaluation followed by documented recognition, you would never again accept being invisible or underappreciated. Never again accept being invisible. A lesson delivered through 2 weeks of systematic humiliation designed to teach me that I deserve better treatment than I've been accepting. He also wanted the family to reveal their true attitudes about your value without the constraint of knowing their inheritance depended on treating you fairly. He needed to know whether they saw you as an essential partner or a convenient resource. The test results are unambiguous. Victoria immediately assumed I would serve as her unpaid technical advisor while she received credit for decisions I made. Mom dismissed my 15 years of expertise as handling details while praising Victoria's non-existent vision. Michael expected me to continue solving problems he couldn't understand while accepting subordinate status to someone with no relevant qualifications. They failed the test spectacularly, demonstrating that they see me exactly as Dad suspected, valuable enough to exploit but not important enough to elevate. There's one final component, Mr. Henderson says, producing a sealed envelope marked with my name in Dad's handwriting. Robert wanted you to read this only after learning about the Codicil and reviewing the documentation of your contributions. I open the envelope with fingers that no longer shake, my hands steady with the confidence that comes from finally understanding the complete picture. The letter inside is written on Dad's personal stationery, his familiar handwriting filling 2 pages with thoughts he couldn't express while alive. Emma, the letter begins, if you're reading this, it means the family responded to your potential displacement exactly as I feared they would. They treated you as dispensable despite depending on you daily. They reduced your contributions to technical details despite knowing that your expertise drives our success. They expected you to serve rather than lead despite your superior qualifications for leadership. His words capture the painful reality of the past 2 weeks with surgical precision. I designed this test not to punish you, but to liberate you from the need to seek their validation. You have been seeking recognition from people who are incapable of giving it because acknowledging your worth would require them to acknowledge their own limitations. People who are incapable of giving recognition because it would require acknowledging their own limitations. The insight cuts through 15 years of confusion about why my achievements never seemed sufficient to earn respect from people who claim to love me. Victoria inherited my optimism and charm, but she lacks your technical competence and strategic thinking. Michael inherited my stubbornness and independence, but he lacks your work ethic and problem-solving abilities. You inherited my passion for building and my understanding that real success comes from competence rather than connections. He saw the differences clearly, even while maintaining family harmony by avoiding explicit comparisons. Rodriguez Construction and Development exists because you made it exist. Your innovations, your client relationships, your solutions to impossible problems, your willingness to sacrifice personal time for professional excellence, these are the foundations upon which our empire stands. You built it. You should own it. You built it. You should own it. The validation I've been seeking for 15 years, delivered through legal documents because he couldn't provide it while alive without destroying family relationships. Take the company, Emma. Run it according to your vision rather than mine. Make decisions based on your expertise rather than others' expectations. Build the future you deserve rather than the future others have planned for you. The letter continues with practical instructions about managing the transition, handling family reactions, and protecting myself legally during what will undoubtedly be a difficult period of adjustment. But the essential message is clear: I have been liberated from the obligation to make myself small enough to fit into other people's limited vision of my potential. Mr. Henderson provides additional paperwork that needs to be signed, ownership transfer documents that will be filed with the state within 48 hours. Emma, as of tomorrow morning, you will be the sole owner of Rodriguez Construction and Development. Victoria's ownership stake reverts to you automatically based on the family's failure to meet the conditions your father established. Sole ownership. Everything I've built, everything I've earned, everything I've been denied finally belongs to me legally as well as practically. There is one complication, he adds, his tone shifting to something approaching warning. Your family doesn't know about the Codicil yet. Robert specifically instructed that they should learn about it from you, in whatever manner you deem appropriate. They don't know. Victoria is sitting in what she thinks is her office, planning rebranding strategies for what she believes is her company. Mom is probably already shopping for furniture to redecorate the corporate headquarters she expects Victoria to modernize. Michael is likely preparing to assume whatever nepotistic position Victoria creates for him in the family business he thinks she controls. I spend another hour with Mr. Henderson, reviewing legal details and signing documents that formalize my ownership of everything I've spent 15 years building. The paperwork feels surreal, as if I'm co-signing someone else's fantasy rather than claiming my own reality. By 11 a.m., I'm driving back to RCD with legal documents that prove what I've always known but could never verify: I am not the supporting character in someone else's success story. I am the protagonist of my own achievement narrative, finally armed with the evidence necessary to claim my starring role. The company parking lot looks different now that I know it belongs to me. The building that houses my life's work belongs to me. The projects under construction across Phoenix belong to me. The client relationships that generate millions in annual revenue belong to me. The employees who depend on competent leadership belong to me. Victoria's BMW still occupies Dad's parking space, but tomorrow that will change along with everything else about the power dynamic that has defined my professional existence. Tomorrow I will park wherever I choose because everything in this parking lot will belong to me. I walk through the lobby where Maria greets me with the same warm smile. She's offered every morning for 8 years. Tomorrow she'll be greeting the owner of the company instead of the owner's invisible daughter. Tomorrow her paycheck will come from someone who actually earned the authority to sign it. Victoria's voice carries from Dad's office where she's apparently conducting a phone conversation about logo design and marketing strategy. I can hear her discussing brand elevation and market positioning with someone who's probably charging her hundreds of dollars per hour to listen to ideas about an industry she doesn't understand. I knock on the office door, my knuckles rapping against wood that covers a space that officially belongs to me now. Victoria waves me in with the distracted gesture of someone too important to be interrupted by lesser concerns. Emma. Perfect timing. I'm talking to a branding consultant about refreshing our corporate image. She has some fascinating ideas about color psychology and typography that could really transform how clients perceive us. Color psychology. Typography. Strategic solutions to problems that exist only in Victoria's imagination, proposed by consultants who specialize in separating naive business owners from their money. Victoria concludes her phone conversation and turns to me with the satisfied expression of someone who believes she's being productively busy. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I really want to move forward with some changes that will modernize RCD's image and expand our market reach. Our conversation yesterday. When I tried to explain why rebranding an established construction company was inadvisable and she dismissed my concerns as resistance to innovation. Victoria, we need to talk. There's something important about Dad's estate that you need to know. Her expression shifts from enthusiasm to concern, probably worried that some legal complication will interfere with her renovation plans or expansion strategies. What kind of something? I close the office door and take the seat across from the desk that belongs to me now. The bronze trowel sits in its usual spot, catching the morning light that streams through windows I now own. For the man who builds dreams, the engraving reads, but the person who actually built those dreams is finally ready to claim them. Dad left additional instructions about the company ownership. Instructions that change everything you think you know about your inheritance. Victoria's face goes pale as I explain the codicil, the test, and the conditions that she and the family failed to meet. I show her copies of the legal documents that transfer complete ownership to me, effective immediately. I watch her confident expression crumble as she realizes that her brief reign as CEO was nothing more than an elaborate evaluation that she failed spectacularly. "This can't be legal," she whispers, her voice barely audible above the hum of the air conditioning system. "It's completely legal. Mr. Henderson confirmed everything this morning." Victoria stares at the documents spread across the desk, her dreams of business leadership evaporating like steam from hot asphalt. "But I've already made commitments. I've hired consultants, scheduled meetings, started planning changes. Planning changes to a company that was never actually hers, making commitments with authority she never legally possessed. Those commitments were made without proper ownership authority. They'll need to be cancelled or revised." The reality hits her in waves, each one more devastating than the last. She's not the CEO of a construction empire. She's not the visionary leader transforming a family business. She's not the sophisticated executive bringing innovative thinking to traditional industry practices. She's someone who spent 2 weeks playing pretend in an office that belongs to someone else, making plans for a future that was never going to happen. "Emma, this isn't fair. Dad promised me the company. Everyone expected me to inherit the business leadership role. Everyone expected it because everyone assumed that ownership should go to the person who looked the part rather than the person who earned it. Everyone expected it because everyone confused inheritance entitlement with leadership qualification. Dad promised you what he needed to promise to conduct his test fairly. He promised me what I actually earned through 15 years of building this company's success." Victoria tries several more arguments, each one more desperate than the last. She mentions the unfairness of secret tests and hidden conditions. She complains about the impossibility of succeeding at challenges she didn't know existed. She suggests that Dad's mental state might have been compromised by grief or medication when he executed the codicil. None of her arguments change the fundamental reality: she failed a test she didn't know she was taking because she treated me exactly the way Dad expected her to treat me. She revealed her true attitudes about my value when she thought her inheritance wasn't dependent on recognizing my worth. By noon, Victoria has exhausted her objections and accepted the reality of her situation. She'll retain a small consulting role if she wants it, providing aesthetic input on projects where her art history background might add value. But she'll never again sit behind the desk that represents authority she never earned or competence she doesn't possess. What about Mom and Michael? She asks, her voice hollow with defeat. They'll learn about the ownership change when I decide to tell them. For now, this information stays between us. Victoria nods, gathering her personal items from the office. That was briefly hers but always belonged to someone else. The branding consultant's business card goes into her purse along with logo sketches and market positioning notes that will never be implemented. After she leaves, I sit alone in the office that finally belongs to me legally as well as practically. The bronze trowel catches the afternoon sunlight, its engraving more meaningful now that I understand the complete story it represents. 4. The man who builds dreams. But the woman who actually built those dreams is finally ready to sign her own name to them. Tomorrow I'll begin the process of running Rodriguez Construction and Development according to my vision rather than someone else's expectations. I'll make decisions based on 15 years of expertise rather than inherited authority. I'll build the future I deserve rather than the future others plan for me. Tonight, I'll call Sarah Chen and tell her that I won't be starting my own construction firm after all. I already own one. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.